Welcome back to part 8, I believe that this will be, for these chunks of video I have ready. The power steering lines were in the mailbox. Ran down and grabbed those. This is a Scram Speed kit off eBay, and it has instructions for 79 to 97 Mustang and how many shims you need. It says Mustang rank and pinion generally requires approximately 1,000 psi, so you have to use some of the shims. It also has this little guy. It looks like you use this to pinch the thing in the vise to take it apart, and then these lines. So I got to figure out how to get those in. Right now I'm going to modify this trans harness that would go into an AOD. That way the starter will work with the key. So I cleaned up the end of the connector. This goes into the car harness, and what we're going to do here is unzip all the shield off of it. So the two that we need to jump are these two down in here. How do we get enough light in here? So there's two pins down on this side. Let me grab an actual light. Is there an actual light laying around here? There's not. But there are, there you go, these two pins over here. So they correspond to the white, pink, and blue, red wires. So we're gonna trace these back. So it's white, pink, and the blue, red. So it's these two wires here. So these two need to touch, and the rest we can cut off. So I'm just gonna cut these off and leave the rest of the harness in case he ever wants to switch back for any reason. So these two are gonna get chopped. I'll chop these a little closer. And then chop these two. So this is the part that plugs into the car. These two are gonna solder together. Solder these together here. Just make a little pigtail. I'll tell you what, listening to copyright-free music while you're working sucks. Okay, throw some heat shrink on that, and I'll plug that back in. Back down under the car, here's the plug that comes out of the side of the trans tunnel, in line with the trans crossmember mount. So there's a hole that goes in the body here, and then this comes out. One of them is for the mechanical gear for the speedometer that we're not going to be able to use in this transmission. I have to figure something out for that. But this is the plug that goes into the AOD to let it know if it's in park or neutral. I made a little pigtail out of this. Connected the two wires that you saw in the previous clip, put some shrink tubing on it. Trick for a seal on the end of a piece of shrink tubing when you're using it as like a pigtail plug is to make this extra length, fold it back over on itself after you shrink it, and slip another piece of shrink tubing over it so it's sealed in the end here. So this just goes into here. If I can do this with one hand. And don't ask me what music came on. It's copyright free stuff, and it just kind of keeps going. Alright, so we got, alright, there. So that's now on. So now I'm just gonna zip tie this stuff up for now, out of the way, maybe over here. I'll zip it up, and then we'll make sure the starter's working. Got power hooked up, everything's zip tied up under there. The shifter's not even hooked up, but before we would get nothing. So now let's see if we'll just wing it. Key on. Yep, now we got starter. If you ever wondered how an easy way you can transfer bolt hole distances and shapes and everything for when you're trying to get hole distances measured for brackets or just putting it up, being dirty. Okay, being dirty has its bonuses. You can take some paper, clean white notebook paper, you place this down and you hold it there, and then all you do is rub your fingers around. Well, that hand's not dirty enough. Rub your dirty fingers around the edges, and look at that. There's a hole. There's a hole. There's a hole. And there's a hole. Reach down here and grab some dirt off the floor. I'll get the edges figured up. And there you go. That's the shape that we need right there, and all the bolt locations. So I can cut this out, transfer it to cardboard, and then put my brackets on it, my feet. I'm going to use these feet here. These are the stock MSD feet. All I'm going to do is take this, find out where I need to put these, make a plate, put it up on the firewall, nutsert everything in, and then these are little rubber isolator standoffs, and then screws hold this box to these. Quick and easy tip. Scratch the idea of using the firewall for mounting the MSD. With those ripples, it was going to be a real pain, plus it still would have been in the engine bay with the heat. So, I mean, you want to keep them out, you want to keep them dry. Thought about putting it over here, but the MSD harness is really short, and I would have had to extend all of the wiring. So as I'm sitting here deliberating where to put the thing, my dad walks out and says, "Why don't you just put it in the car?" That's a good idea. It works. So this harness here, I just took all of the pants off of it, so it's just the wire sticking out. The previous owner had cut the tack wire and the switch 12 volt power wire, so I need to extend these. I'm going to make them really long, because once it goes in, I'm going to tap power off the fuse block over here, and the tack's going to probably go up here somewhere on the dash. So I'll make them extra long. So I'm going to go ahead and get the wires I need extended on this harness extended, kick it through this hole, retape everything up so it looks really nice. I'm going to use hockey tape. It's that cloth sticky tape, and it'll look like a factory harness. So I'll go ahead and get these extended. We're going to use the helping hands and extend these cables or wires. I believe at this point we all know the drill here. Maybe not. Wiring, wiring, more wiring. Helping hands make this easy though. Solder on there. Make sure it's hot. And then use the heat gun. Pretty standard stuff here, people. Pretty standard stuff. Yoink. There's one. Now I'll do the other. So just to make this a little easier to wrap, I'm going to run a couple zip ties to these little guys through here. Just make sure that the cable, all the wires are laying nice and flat and nested with each other. Might have to wiggle them around until they're all laying nice. some around the solder joints I just made. Don't quite want to lay. They must be a little longer somewhere in the harness. It's gonna make it bend and crook anyway, right about there. There's the tails. And then for the tape we're gonna use, just going to use some of this Howie's hockey tape. It's like a cloth. It sticks really well to itself. It doesn't so much stick to the wires, so it doesn't make them all sticky and nasty, but it'll stick really good to itself, and it looks like factory finish. Got that all taken care of, and it looks really good. Came out really nice. Routed it down under where I want it to go. Now I need to get everything through the hole. So we're going to do the fishing technique. This is a filler wire for TIG. So I'm going to use this and pull all this extra cable here out. And what I'm going to do is take some duct tape, and we're going to affix the welding wire to the cable or the wire we need to pull through into the car. Wrap it like that. Leave yourself a tail. Fold it over on itself. Okay. And so you don't lose everything, give it a little tug. It's nice and snug. So now we can go hunting, trying to get down in here. So we actually want this to go under the -6. Is that the way we want to go? Yeah, that'll be the best way to take it. So really I should take these off. Let's see if we can get that in there. Shoot that down. Put a bent crook in it. Push. In the car, I should be able to find this. Oh, there it is. So that's the way it needs to go. I may actually end up having to pull off the -6's fuel feed and return unless we go above the regulator, and we can tuck it up here instead of letting them go low. Let's do that. Let's give that a whirl. Straighten our welding wire back out. So now we're going to come up above and just aim down the hole. Carpet in there I can feel. Oh, there we go. There we found a path. Let's go see if we can find it in the car. It's in here somewhere. Let's see. Carpet. There it is, right here. So we can carefully pull this down in, and I'll just have to keep getting up and down and wriggling it in as it comes. Garage is now stinking again like gas. I just went ahead and undid the line that's running off the regulator to the carb, snuck the harness for the MSD harness back here behind it, goes in. I'm gonna run some weather strip or something around that so it doesn't leave a sharp edge. Down in here, I left plenty of wire, red switch 12 volts, and so in key positions 2 and 3, so it needs in the run and the crank. Yellow's tack signal, and then right down here is the plug. So we're good to go. We've gotten to the last big, messier job that needs done yet, and that is these power steering lines. So I needed to get access to everything down here, and what I'm gonna do is I bought a kit, and you can see which ones of these are going up to the loop, the cooling loop, and which ones are return. So it's these two over on this side I'm gonna need to get off. They're the pressure in the loop. So I pulled off the whole bracket. That just made it easy because there wasn't a whole lot of room there. And here's the pump off. Here's the pressure line. This one's pressure right here. And then this one here is the return. That just comes up to here. So I bought a kit. It's a Scram Speed kit off of eBay with some instructions, which I have to read through and figure out. And they came with these nice lines. So these are to convert the LS to Ford rack using the truck pump, which is what we have. So here's the pressure line, here's the return line. I think we're still gonna loop this into the factory cooler, and then the other side will come off and go up into the pump right here. So let's see what we got. It says Ford Commons Ford swaps include Fox SN95 Mustang platform. 97 or 79 to 97 Ford Mustang is 1,000 psi, so you have to shim this. So it looks like there's a flow valve from the pump. The flow valve is located where the pressure hose connects to the pump. So behind this there's going to be a valve assembly, it looks like, that has a spring and something in it. Looks like it gives you a cover to slide over it to protect it in the vise. You remove the bolt from the valve, remove any shims that may be present, and add shims from this kit is needed to obtain proper pressure. And it looks like, again, this 1,000 psi, which is 3 shims. So I'm gonna get this ripped apart and try and figure all that out. I've never done one of these before, but we'll see how it goes. This bolt here, to get this loose, is a 16 millimeter. Oh, I'm smacking the camera. So this is 16 millimeter. So let's see if this valve is behind like they said it would be. Okay, there is something in there. It looks like a crush olive almost. That seals against this. Let's see what else we gotta do here. Not sure exactly how that comes out. Flow valve. How do we get the flow valve out? Let's get something to pick with. I don't want to mar anything. So how does one get that out? I do see the spring. I don't know if that has a bolt. Oh, is it a 7/16? Is that what they mean? I'll grab a 7/16. So here's a 7/16. That's too big. Oh, unless this whole thing comes out. This whole thing might come out. I'll gently see if that wants to come out. How big is that? Oh, huge. 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 1 inch. 1 inch is the winner. So we'll give this a gentle nudge here. I don't know if this comes out or not. A little tap tap. connecting. Feels like it should be part of the casting. Yeah, that feels solid. So, how do we get that out? Let me think about that. Okay, so I see no other way that this comes off. Oh, yep, we just needed something a little more gusto. So I imagine that's going to come out of there a Helen because it's got a big old spring behind it. Should probably cleaned all this up. I don't want stuff falling down in there. So I'm going to scrape this clean a little bit before I pull that out. I don't want junk falling into the pump. Alright, cleaner, cleaner, cleaner. Now, let's see if this is going to spring into a billion pieces. Trying to keep pressure downward on it. At the same time, very glad at this point I took it out of the car. It's close. Yep, there's a spring in there. Okay. So this is the flow valve. Just pushes on an O-ring diaphragm in here. It goes up and down. So you have to remove this. So I see what they need to do. Okay, this nut needs to come off of this assembly right here, and there's stuff in here, down in here, that needs to come off, and you need to pinch it in. They supply a, is it this? Yeah. So this is meant to protect the threads when you pinch it in the vise. Scram speed. What else do they give you in here? Washer and an O-ring. I'm assuming, let me see where that O-ring goes. Hardest part of the job so far, getting this little bag open. Alright. So there's an O-ring, which I'm assuming, yeah, that O-ring replaces the O-ring in here, it looks like. And it has a bunch, oh, here are the shims. And then here is the piece, this goes around here. I think, is it tapered? I'll have to open this up a little bit. And then this goes in here to pinch the threads, so when you pinch this in the vise you can get this off. So let me get this opened up and I'll stick it in the vise. Okay, after much cussing and cleaning rigorously and realizing that there's no part lines on this piece, and then looking closer at the instructions, which, you know, who looks at the instructions, you see this piece here? Well, would you look at that? That's this piece. The flow valve is what we need behind it. It's that little rubber springy thing that I was talking about in the beginning. And if you look at some of this freaking voodoo magic, yeah, just magnet in here and poof. Would you look at that? And there's the 7/16 that are in the instructions. And bonus, now that I destroyed this thing and I'll have to crimp it back shut, well, that would have fit to begin with. Okay, well, you know, you live and you learn. So never did one of these before, and this is a learning process on this. So now I'll take it apart and shim it. 7/16 is what is on the list here. And it looks like there's another spring behind this. And we have this clamped in here the way it's supposed to be. Ooh, and it still might actually. This is like a nut on a, has a filter under it. I can't tell. Am I spinning the whole damn thing? Of course I'm spinning the whole damn thing. Tighter. Oh, yes. Shitty vise, shitty vise. Shitty, shitty vise. Doesn't help I pinched a giant freaking taper in the damn thing, which means I need to go a little lower. Get down. There we go. There it comes. Now the key here is going to be to not lose the spring. I don't know how much pressure's in this thing. Might even use the rag technique. Of course, I pick up the rag and all the shims are in it and fall. Shims back. So we're going to do the rag technique. This is loosening. The rag over. I don't want to lose anything. Oh, popped up. So, what is in here? Some goo. Some goo. Okay, we got some goo. There's a little needle in there. Goo on the threads. And this is a filter. You can see. That sits in here. So now we have to shim it. And you shim. Let's read the instructions, people. Read the instructions. So if this is the body that's in the vise, here's everything here. You place the shims here. I do believe that looks like that. Okay, so the shims go at the top of this. So board, rack, Mustang rack and pinions generally require 1,000 psi, so we need 3 of these shims. They're just little metal shims. Of course, we want to drop these and lose them in the dirt on the floor. Shim, shim, shim. Trace shimays. And you grind this back into its nasty threads. I don't know if I want to clean those out or not. I don't think I do. Okay. 7/16 are back down on there. I'm assuming tight because the shims are going to set the distance for when it gets tight. Shaky, shaky. Okay. Make this pretty darn snug. Okay. All right. Now, aside from the lines, this is our finished product that is now trapped in this thing that I completely destroyed. Oh yeah, look at that egg shaping. Excellent. Okay. I'm gonna open this up. Then we'll stick it back in. We have lessons learned, but this is what you want. This is what you want to take the nut off of. This is what you want to not modify the sleeve for. So we now have our 3 shims stacked up on there. I'll clean up that filter a little bit. Filter. I don't want to put brake clean through it just because I don't know what materials are down in it. Okay, so now this bad boy goes back, plopped in the hole, plop. And then we take this thing, I just put the new O-ring on it. This is all clean. This is gonna push in there and go on just like that. Now we're gonna tighten that up real tight. the 25. Well, 25 is 1, or 1 is 1. This would be easier with a socket that I have already put away. Okay, so that's the shim kit. Learned something new today. Now all we do is put the lines on, and I'll probably actually put the line on back here and get it pretty close to where I want it. I might just mock this up where it needs to be. Okay, that should be tight enough. Smash the pressure line on it. Now, these are probably 2 different threads, and they aren't marked which one is which. Let's actually see if... This one has a washer on it, so I'm assuming this one has a separate washer. I'm gonna bet this end goes on the rack. I'm gonna bet this one is the one that goes into the pump. Feels questionable at best. Excellent. And I don't think we want to go straight down. I think we're going to put this in at a cant here. The factory one, now granted we're going to a different rack location, but this one was in there, yeah, about that. That tight. It's a little difficult to hold, twist, and spin. Okay, it's tight. So I'm gonna assume when this one coils around and goes in, I hope that's how it goes. I wouldn't think the washer, no, the washer wouldn't go here because this is a tapered thread. And this one's a straight thread with an O-ring and a washer. So this one's got a, this other end here that you can't see off screen is going to be what goes in. And actually, aha, this is a union. That's all that is, that's a union. And this is an adapter which takes a flare like that and adapts it to the straight threads that go in the rack. So I'll probably install this in the rack first, this piece, and then wrestle the cable up in place. I can get everything nice and tight. Okay, begin the wrestling process. Now that we got the pressure in, I just went ahead and wrestled out the factory feed line, which is a real pain. The rack, has the aftermarket AJE crossmember in it, and these fittings on the rack are so close. This one ended up having to cut off the factory return line, so I could slip an 18mm long socket down over here to crack this out of the rack. And then after that was out, that gave me enough access to use this 19mm crow's foot down on the bottom and get that one cracked free. So these, as you can see, have a tapered end on them. The threads aren't really tapered, so these are a little different. I hope everything should work. But these have an O-ring, or an O-ring and a crush washer, or a washer that's going to crush down the O-ring flat. So in order to get that to seal up nice, went ahead and really scrubbed and cleaned up these 2 holes in the rack, the female threads. So the top is the return and the bottom is the pressure. So I'm going to put the union fittings in first, and then I'll put the feed line on, which will be on the bottom, and then I'll have to get the top return line. That's a little tight to get in there with filming, so I'll just try and get it on there and then take another video. Shiny new fittings are in down there. You can see them. Let's get some light on the shiny things. Oh, look at them. It's like a diamond in the rough. So this is the return, and this is just gonna go on here like that, and then thread in. It's really hard to do with my wrong hand. Can't see. We'll get that on there, and I'm going to put the pressure line in as well. here's what we're dealing with down below. So we're looking up from the bottom. So what we're gonna do is put up this feed line. It's gonna go right here on this one. And again, this is difficult to do when it's slippery and one hand that I can't see. So I'm gonna get that one there just for reference. And then the one above it is gonna go in here like this. And then this other end, I can either loop into the factory loop here, which I'll probably do, and then put the other end of the loop right here into the return of the pump. So I'm gonna get these tight. So that job is now done. There's the feed and return up here. Going up into the pump. Return comes down into my favorite figure 8 loops, into the factory cooler loop, and back up into the pump for the return. So that finishes that up. Head back topside. It's still leaking somewhere. As usual with most of my cars, we are having, well, I'm having issues with getting ground. Noticed yesterday I had all the eyes on it trying to get it to start, and so the battery's coming up and then it hits this post and then it goes over to the starter. Well, I didn't have an engine ground on it, so I noticed when I would go to key it and hit the S-wire, energize the S-wire to kick the starter, we're getting an arc between the brake line and the header back there. So that means I need to get some grounds on this, which I probably should do anyway. So what I'm gonna do is this back bolt right back down here is where I had grounded my coils through the MSD harness. And what I'm gonna do is pick up, I'm gonna use a piece of welding cable and make another ground cable, a nice 2/0 ground cable, and this should be plenty. And I'm gonna actually pick up, so it's gonna go in the back of the cylinder head. I'm gonna make all this shiny and use, I have some grounding washers with the serrations in them so they dig in. I'm gonna use some of those, one on each end, and along with that, I'm also going to pick up the cross member bolts that go into the subframe, or keep the front subframe bolted to the body of the car. So let's make this quick. The way I do this is just by buying 2/0 welding cable and then the ends from Battery Warehouse. This is what they sell. So I'm going to measure the distance that this needs to go down in. So about here. Take a razor blade, carefully run this around deep enough to get the insulation off, but not so deep to take the hair off. And you can tell I've done this a few times. Okay, and I twirl these a little, give them a little bit of a twist to really tuck them in against each other. That way, when everything's hot, this will slip down on there without too much pain. I mean, some hairs are, and it's inevitable, you're gonna not get all the hairs. Okay, that's that part. Now this part, I don't have the crimping tool for this, so I just solder all my ends. So I use some MAP gas. I'm gonna get this nice and hot. Pieces of solder. almost out of solder. I'm gonna have to go get some more. So I fill it up about halfway because you have to figure the thickness of the cable is gonna push it out, and you'll see. So 1, I make that hot. 2, I always make the end of the cable hot. It's like for wicking purposes, just like when you're soldering anything. You want to get this hot without melting the insulation coating off. And then when I slip this in, I don't want to slip it in too quick. Nice and hot. Don't want to slip it in too quick so it spits it all out. Kind of want to work it down in. Not that cool. That'll get hard, and then I can clean up the outside. Put some shrink tubing on it. Ooh, that cable is hot. I should probably buy the crimping tool, but this is just generally how I make them. There we go. It kind of like glues and seals it. Now I'll go put it in. So here is where I'm gonna route this, pull it down. It's going to get zip tied up here with the transcooler lines that are coming through, keep it away from the heat. And then it is going to come over here and pick up this bolt right here. So this is the cross member and bolts to the suspension pieces here and then into the unibody of the car. So next step would be we're going to shine this up. I can see what I'm doing. Thick stuff on there. We might need to get something a little more abrasive. Oh, it's working. Painfully slow. Well, there we go. Now it's cutting it. Just using an abrasive, like a Scotch-Brite pad thing. Okay. should be about enough. So now, I'm gonna take the bolt, which I cleaned up, and clean up this bolt, sanded down and really shined up the washer. And I have some of these things that really chew into the material that's under them. So we're gonna use this up here. So now we are gonna take the cable, bolt. Bolt's gonna have to kind of be threaded in this hole. And actually, we might, well, yeah, we'll do it this way. So, bolt, and the end, washer, grounding washer. Kind of put this up this way, find where the hole's at. And of course, fighting all the cable at once is kind of a pain. Up in there and started. Oh, there, it feels right. There we go. So that's started in there real good. Roll up in. Helps it go in the right direction. Tight. I think we might actually rotate it a hair. Let's see if we can keep it this way. Okay, that'll be good. And now all we're going to do is reach up in here with some zip ties and tie it to the transcooler lines. Keep it away from the header heat. One. And try and get another one in here. I don't know if you guys can see or not. So we're going to rotate this up a little bit. Rotate. Rotate, rotate. Rotate where we need it. Zip it tight. Okay. And there's what we're left with. It's out of the way of the heat, out of the way of the tubes. We'd actually tie it over a little bit more yet somehow. I'll pick something up there and really tie it away. But there we go, now we should have good ground. Okay, so it means, now you watch for oil pressure. I'm gonna be on key. Actually, you'll have to pull the plug, because that's supplying fuel and spark. Oh, jeez. Open spark. Good. Ready?
doesn't sound too bad.
As you just saw, we got the first fire on the car completed. Took some banging my head against the wall, and my dad and I both looking at it trying to figure out why the hell 12 volts wasn't getting to all the sensors. And you have to have 12 volts to the coils, cam sensor, crank sensor. You have to power everything for it to work. So the previous owner, as I had stated, had kind of butchered this harness and cut it, and it looked like one of these pins also pulled out of the connector down here. So right now it looks ugly. I have to pull it out and clean it up, but it ended up being this wire here needed extended and put back in the connector. Also, I ran a 10 gauge ground from the cylinder head down here, runs under the car and goes up into the battery negative. So now we have a shared battery and chassis ground all right there at that one spot, and I mean that's good ground. So got it fired. There are a couple leaks that I'm gonna have to address. It looks like it's dripping some transmission fluid down under there, and it also looks like power steering fluid. So I'm hoping it's easy, because these lines down there are an absolute pain to get to and work with without having to take all this stuff off. But I'll see. I'll tinker with it and see what I can get working. Did have good oil pressure. It was holding like 40-50 psi oil pressure cold, and it fired right up, which is great. So carb's pretty good. Everything seems to work good. The tune that was in the MSD box from the previous owner was in good shape. Didn't have to plug it in or change anything. So right now, the fuel pump and MSD are powered with this. I need to pick up. I pulled the wiring through the dash in here to the fuse panel for the MSD, so I need to pick up a key on and while cranking. And then I also need to do a switch for the fuel pump and put it somewhere, or just put it with key on and while cranking, but not accessory. So I got to pick up all that stuff and fuse everything and make it work, because the previous setup, the ECU controlled powering the fuel pump on and off through the relay. But so that's where we're at now. I'm gonna throw together a bunch of different stuff that I don't even remember what all I had recorded, but I'll throw it all together. And then in the next few days, I'll try and work on getting the last odds and ends sorted. The leaks, the brake lines need done, the wheel bearings need done, the shifter linkage and throttle linkage, and those are the last pieces. So I'll try and have something up here within a week or so, and I'll talk to you then.